Okay, so let's talk about piecing the front together. You're going to have your strips that are cut as indicated in the PDF. And if you are using yardage, you will have very long strips. If you are using fat quarters, you will have shorter strips. You're going to basically pick 4 strips or 4 colors and piece those pieces together in the way that you like. And so essentially you're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam along the long edge of each strip, and then you'll want to press the seam towards the darker color and then add the next strip and so on. And so eventually you will have a front that is pieced. Here's the one that I made earlier. And you can see that on the back I've pressed the seams towards the darker color. And once you have your tops pieced, what you're going to want to do is kind of just trim off any unusual edges. Okay, so what I do is I place the front piece and the batting and the back piece that I'm going to be using on my cutting table, and then I trim so that everything is sized to the front piece. So once you've done that trimming, what you're going to do is you're going to make a quilt sandwich, but it's a little bit different than most quilt sandwiches. So what you're going to do is you're going to put on the bottom the batting, then you're going to put the backing face up, and then you're going to put the front piece, which is pieced, the front piece that's pieced, face down. Okay, so you're going to have these 3 layers with the batting on the bottom, the back piece that's one piece in the middle facing up, and the top piece facing down, or side, right sides facing, is going to be your pieced front of the placemat. Once you have these 3 pieces together, you're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam around, and what you'll want to do is leave about, I would say, about close to 2 full strips open. So I usually start sort of on the 3rd strip from the top, and so this way around, and then come back and end sort of on the top of the 2nd stitch. And you'll have this opening that will allow you to turn your placemat right side out. Okay, so I made a teeny tiny version that we're going to use for the rest of the class. And as you can see, by the time you're done, it maybe will have shifted a little. And so you want to trim off any extra batting or extra layers because otherwise it's going to be a bit challenging to turn this right side out. And you can use your rotary cutter for this, of course, but for the video it was a little easier for me to use just a scissor. And you'll also want to clip your 4 corners, being careful not to cut off the seam. And again, that's just going to make it a little bit easier for you to turn this right side out. So when that's done, you're going to take the 2 fabric pieces and you're going to use them to pull the rest of the project right side out. Now, depending on how small you've made your hole, that's going to be a nightmare or it's going to be easy. But what you're going to probably struggle with no matter what are your corners. And I will tell you that your crochet hook has a secret purpose at this point to help you get really clean corners. Okay, so once you have this coming out, you're going to have corners that are probably a little bit lumpy. And so what I usually do is I take my crochet hook and gently, because I'm not trying to push through the seams or anything, I just push those corners out so they're a little bit more pointy. And at this point, Your next step is going to be, well, first you're going to iron it, because most likely after your battle to turn it right side out, it'll be really terribly wrinkled. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create a 1/4 inch top stitch all the way around. You want to be sure that you're closing up this little bit of opening, and most likely it's already pointing inside, but just to make sure, you want to go ahead and do that all the way around. Okay, and then you're going to quilt it as desired. As I mentioned, I usually do stitching in the ditch for projects like this because I don't want the quilting to overpower the crochet. So I would just use my edge joining foot to go from the top stitch across on the lines of where my fabric was pieced, basically. But you can use any type of quilting that you prefer. So once we're done with that step, we're going to get to the fun part, which is adding our crochet.